Welcome back to Animal Crossing New Horizons. I'm dear darling. Shall we see what's going on our lovely island of Fawnhallow today? Where, oh my goodness, what a D&D session we just had. I don't even know what to say, except for this session has been nothing more than the epitome of players completely derailing your plans, not in the way that you would expect. I feel like I'm actually usually pretty good with improvising with strange requests from my players, but oh my god, this session was meant to be memorable one way or another. It was not memorable in the way I expected it to be. So good evening everyone, right now in Fawnhallow. It's 10:41 PM on Wednesday, November 6th, 2024. I will say, if you're one of our players in Group 2's D&D session, this may have spoilers, unwittingly, through things which your group may have not known, but I also understand that the players on both campaigns do talk to each other a decent amount, so, you know, sometimes information gets shared that way. I understand that they probably won't play with a meta-knowledge in their pocket, but oh my god. Okay, so basically this session was meant to be a big thing. Like, I talked about the fact that there was almost a TPK in the last group's session, and one of the players died. This was, I'm not going to say it was a scripted death, because that's not quite true. What it was I had spoken with his player beforehand, and basically he didn't really want to play the class he was playing anymore, and to be fair, it's because he didn't really know about D&D classes or anything like that before. Like, this is literally his first foray into anything tabletop role-playing related, so credit where, to be fair to him, of course he wouldn't exactly know. It was the sort of thing where I did try and tell him at the beginning. I was like, kind of depends what you want to do, whether you think Ranger is a good fit for you or not. And the comparison I said was like, if you want to play like Robin Hood, then Robin Hood with a bow, do Rogue. If you want to play like, I can't remember what is it, like Bear Grylls, then you can play Ranger. If you want to play Hawkeye, then play Fighter. That's like the general idea of sort of how, but your mileage may vary. It's but he ended up playing Ranger anyway, which is, to be fair, you know, you don't really know what any of that means, I suppose, if you haven't actually played the game. So yeah, he approached me at some point, basically being like he wanted to try a different class, or he felt like he made a wrong choice of Ranger, and I was like, that's totally fair. Like, obviously I want you to be able to play the class you want to play. I want you to be able to have fun. If any of my players were like, hey, I want to change class, then sure, so be it. We can try and figure something out. But number one thing would be if you're having fun. If you're having fun with a different part, not having fun because of a different part, like, oh, you don't like maybe my style of DMing or the type of story which is being told, then fair enough, and that's just going to be like, I can't really do anything about that. I'm not going to change the entire way I tell the story unless everyone else was like, no thanks. But this one is like easier, quick to fix. It's mechanical, isn't it? But the problem is that what I try and do is I try and incorporate everyone's characters into the story in a way that makes sense, and because I want all the characters to have an investment in one way or another. So every character stories are somewhat intertwined, which does mean that, like, if a character does like genuinely die, is that going to cause some issues? It will cause some issues, but that's resolvable. But this was the sort of thing where I was just like, okay, well, if we don't need to unnecessarily kill your character, let's not unnecessarily kill your character, because the usual way you would do it is you would just like sort of get a new character in, like the other character would leave, and I was like, that seems a bit like we can do something a bit more finessey than that. Because very luckily for us, for me, is that the class he wanted to become was a Warlock, and Warlock is by far and away the easiest class probably to substitute into, because anyone can take a pact at any time and just become a Warlock, right? And this one was actually a pretty, not too difficult to do, like conceptually, because he was a Drake Warden Ranger before, so he had a pet dragon, and this dragon is, as my players now know, it's a bit of a special dragon, and basically you know, when he said this and he was like considering Warlock, I was like, okay, that's actually quite an easy transition to make. We can make your dragon pet, which you've been raising, can become your patron. I'll figure out a way. And that's basically what was going to happen. And once they all leveled up to level 7, you know, where we planned it all beforehand, like I helped him build a character, and then it was just like, okay, I'm going to tell you that from any point now on, from level 7 onwards, you may become your new character. Certain plot points have to be met. And I can peel back the curtain, I suppose. to say that the triggering conditions would be if he died, if he, I can't remember, what was it? If he died, if he got into contact with like a large amount of magic, and there's something else, but I forgot what the other one was. I can't remember what the other, oh no, the other one was when he leveled up to level 8, it would open as a possibility. And they all have like different ways of doing it. So like I had a mini plan, like a rough idea of what might happen if any of these conditions are met, and how he would be able to immediately become the new class. So I had like stuff like prepped in advance, because I was like, I had to be ready at literally any moment. And then in the last session, there was another plot point for another character story. His character is all about sort of like hunting things and challenging foes and that sort of thing, where I was just like, okay, well, you know, time to show this is what your deity, because he follows a deity which does it, is all about. You know, your deity's not gonna like pull as many punches anymore, because he now sees potential in you. So he gave an offer which I knew the character would take to the highest degree. It was basically like, this fight you're about to do is really boring, I'm gonna make it harder for you. How hard do you want it? And then the character obviously went as hard as possible, and that's why the fight was very difficult. And I knew in my mind that this could have been a lethal encounter. I didn't expect it to be, because the characters are pretty strong, to be perfectly honest. Because I want my characters to skew stronger rather than weaker, and the thing I was making them fight was not like a boss encounter, it was a boss enemy, and a single boss enemy tends to be a lot easier just due to action economy. But this enemy doesn't have legendary actions, doesn't have lair actions or resistances or anything like that. It's just a big tough enemy. So the danger is really that like the characters could be like immediately downed if they're not careful. But yeah. So I knew it was possible, but the person who wanted to change her class also played a lot more recklessly than I imagined, and also, to be fair, didn't know he could die. They were in a space where it was like, oh, basically you can't die in this like arena, but then secretly the boss of the god of a hunt was just like, nah, that's no fun. Essentially, I'm going to remove that caveat. But I told it secretly to one of the players, and he fairly did not tell any of his other party members, which you may say is bad, but no, I think it's very in character for this person. So, not another person, for the character. So really, it was just like a load of things consequently working out, because the character who wants to change recently went through a very difficult moment, so was role-playing his character to be a bit more reckless, and I was like, okay, the character dies. It was very, very close to being a TPK, probably because of that, because he died a lot earlier on than before he did that much damage. So I was very much like, okay, if it is a TPK, then that's going to derail a lot of a campaign, but it's still possible to work with. I do have contingencies if there are TPKs for other parties, because I don't know, like, I want there to be a legit threat of a character dying, but I also do want these characters to be able to have satisfying conclusions to their story arcs, right? Sometimes that's not always the case. So it's not like, I guess me as a person is rooting for their death. Me as a person is not rooting for their death, it's rooting for a nice conclusion to their story, but me as a DM is like, I'm going to play it fair. If you die, you die. So that ended up happening, and this session was meant to be the big reveal that he's coming back, because there was a lot of talk, so there was like a big gap as well between the sessions, where the players were just like, oh man, like, I was kind of actually responsible for this character dying. Everyone is like, didn't expect him to do that, but all the same, it was a lot sort of like leading up to it, and then this was meant to be the big reveal that he's coming back, changed but coming back. And how I planned it in my mind was basically they're like in this arena, in a competition, and this is where like the spoilers could be for the other group. If you're not in this group, then be warned of story spoilers, but you might find it out anyway. And it's also not as relevant to your campaign, I would say. It's more like a side thing. Because this arena that they're in is being run by the group that they are wanting to investigate. The group which, they've befriended an NPC from a previous town who've basically just been like, this group is horrific, they're the worst people ever. And this group who's running the tournament is running. They're the people funding it, they're the people behind it. And that was meant to be a dramatic, slow reveal as they start to put pieces together. It was meant to be a major plot point, which is not something found out immediately. But as you can imagine from me talking about how they completely destroyed the plans, that didn't quite go according to plan. Because I had planned for the situation where they'd bring up this organisation to the people who work for it, and I was like, okay, there's way, like, I need to think about this in advance because I need to be able to answer in a way which is plausible to understand from both situations. I want them to not immediately realise this group is running this organisation. This organisation is behind this tournament, because there's a lot. I'm not going to spoil anything for any of the groups, but there's a lot more than meets the eye, I suppose, to a lot of this. While this is a big reveal very early on, it doesn't completely ruin everything because there's still a lot they need to find out about things. But yeah, I had contingencies in mind, being like, okay, what if they talk to this character who is part of this organisation, what if they say about it, and then I was going to have like this slow sort of drip in where they reveal other things about they hear about the organisation and things that they do through the town, because the only source they have of that information for organisation is through one NPC who, to be fair, they do trust a lot, and is a good friend of them. But you know, I guess to peel back the curtains, because they'll find out sooner or later, is they will start to see that it's a bit more complicated. It's not like this company is just like straight out here murdering people just for fun or anything. There's a reason they've got so powerful, and there's a reason that if they actually wanted to ask anyone about the place, a lot of people have pretty decent, perspective of this organisation, which was meant to sort of like start some confusion in the players as they go like, what's going on, like why would our friend like absolutely hate this company with like every fibre of their being and accuse them of such like strong criminal acts, when really like they've just been doing a lot of this stuff, and it's just like a lot of like other stuff, and it was meant to be like this whole confusion, and then like it was meant to eventually be this sort of big reveal where it's like, oh yes, the Lord of the Arena is entrenched within this organisation. But as it turns out, they ended up trusting one of the people from the organisation, like with a spokesperson, who in my mind, I didn't really care if they ended up liking him that much or not. He was just meant to sort of be like a fast talking sort of like sales guy, if anything, sort of a person who goes out on the streets being like, hey, can I interest you in this product? You look like someone who desperately looking to buy something, etc, etc. That's what the vibe he was meant to give, but I think it's just because of one interaction the character very dramatically ended up crying to him, and I was just like, okay, I guess this character like it's not adversarial, he's not going to be like, oh, screw you. He would at least try to make good relations, like that's kind of like his whole point. So they ended up liking that character, and in that case also trusting his boss. And then it just blew my mind, because so far in this campaign they've not said anything about this organisation to anyone. I even reiterated it, that the friend that they found the information from at the beginning of Act 2 was basically like, you need to be able to keep a low profile here and be careful who you trust and talk to. This place is not like the place you were just in before. The place you were in before, community is a strong aspect, is one of their big virtues, but this place is not every man out for itself, but information talks and money talks here. So if you want to keep the power, you got to keep the money, you got to keep the information. And ironically, I suppose they've been pickpocketed, and they also told the person who's so entrenched within this organisation to investigate literally everything. And I was like, oh, while it was happening and they brought it up, I was like, obviously I'm not going to react, because the players should have agency. They should decide what they want to do. They're writing the story as much as myself. I was just sort of like biting my knuckle, being like, oh my god, please don't do this. You are going to insanely regret this. So I was also like stalling as well, being like, okay, so yeah, you want to tell them anything? Okay, you sure you want to do that? Like, okay, so like, what specifically? And they were just like, yeah, we'll say everything. To be fair, role playing, I don't think it's totally out of character of them. They're a trusting bunch, which is why, I thought it was interesting. They're a very trusting bunch, which is why they started in a very trusting community, and now I was like, let's get some character growth in here. Act 2, we're putting them in a face where people will take advantage of that trust if they're not careful. And this is a thing where I was like, okay, like while I'm playing his character, and I'm going to give him some outs and that sort of thing. They bring up the organization to the big boss man, and he goes, interesting, what do you know about them? As it's like, okay, give an out, like raise some alarm bells that maybe they should be a bit careful what they say. And well, they just said everything. Like, I was taking notes at the same time. Obviously I didn't take notes about what they said, because I was just like, they just tell literally almost the entire adventuring story. I was just like, what are they going to do? And I was like, what am I going to do? A lot of this plot was entrenched in this entire experience. You know, the sort of slow reveal, the slow uncovering and discovering about this organisation and finding bits and pieces, and then slowly eventually putting together, boom, this is an organisation that they've already run into before. And it's just like, oh no, everything's now been upended. I've now got to change like the trajectory of how some things go. Things are now no longer subtle. Like, there's no mystery effort here. They've solved that mystery. So the whole mystery portion of this entire thing is gone. Not entirely. But there's still a lot of other parts left to be discovered, thankfully, about what's going on. So it's not all cut and dry and simple as that. But it has probably upset the tournament arc a little bit. I'm not exactly sure how things are going to go, but, you know, sometimes you just have to play along, because they are in dangerous territory. Like, when... it's kind of like they immediately knew they messed up after like my initial response, where they just said like they're gonna say everything, and I was like, but you tell the story. And then I go, and then he says in response, oh, I think you might have a misguided idea of this organization. And then they just went, oh no. How badly did we just mess up? It's like, it was really great for a whole other reason. That's why I said it's basically like upended plans in a completely different way, rather than it being like, because every time they've upended plans before, it's always been like very small, defined, contained moments. Like, oh, their plot for breaking into the building is insane, but it's basically, that's it. It doesn't have overarching derailment on the plot and reveals and ideas which come later. But this one does. This one extremely does. And not only does it, like, it's not only bad for them, it's actually bad for like almost every single ally they've made. It's basically like you're playing poker with like you're playing poker trying to take down the Lord of all Poker, and then you just showed him all the cards in your hand, and all the rest of the cards that you'll ever draw. And it's just like, oh, okay, I don't even know how they are going to get out of this as players. I don't even know what I'm going to do as a DM to help. Because obviously from a meta perspective, I'm not going to be like, oh, you messed up, you're all completely dead now. I'm going to give them challenges to be able to slowly try and claw their way out of it, right? Like, this is not immediate game over, but this is definitely the sort of situation where they're at death's door, where they make one wrong move and they are going to pay costly for it. Because they expose their entire hand to people that they are suspicious of. So look forward to that, I suppose. If you're on that campaign, you've paid a price, and we'll see how that pans out. But yeah, so this session was meant to be memorable because the other character came back, and it turns out this poor other player, I thought it was going to happen maybe about an hour and a half in. You know, I was just trying to get like the plot moving in that sense about what was going on, and there would be like a nice sort of like dream sequence which ties everything together. It would be like really emotional and moving and heartwarming, and then the rest of the session would be sort of like reintroducing themselves again. But instead he had to wait 2.5 hours out of a 3-hour session, and like right at the end have his dream sequence essentially, which to be fair he was pretty cool with. He didn't mind. But I just like messaged him partway through and I'm so sorry, this is not how I imagined the session was going to happen, but obviously I can't just like sweep this under the rug. Like, obviously, I guess from a meta perspective, I could have just been like, oh, you know, this lord actually has no idea about that organisation and is actually just completely a good guy. I could have just inverted it like that, but I'm like, no. That might ruin other things down the line. You gotta keep the plot consistent, you know? So the signs which you've been leaving before make sense. But this is just like, this is earth-shatteringly huge a shake-up. I don't even know what's going to go on, but I'm excited to see how it happens. Anyway, for now, I'm going to round this episode up here, so if you have been watching, thank you very much. It's been Animal Crossing New Horizons, and I've been Dear Darling. Likes, comments, subscription, shares, greatly appreciated. Socials, Discord down below. Hope to see you again, but now it's our farewell. So until next time, bye bye for now.